Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Welcome to the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, a show where I interview guests that teach, motivate, and inspire. Today, I am joined by Jeaneen Tang. She is a speech language pathologist with over 20 years of experience in early intervention, 0 to 3, and she also does early intervention all the way up to the elderly. She trains parents and caregivers how to help kids express themselves. So we're going to be talking to her about everything that she's up to and why she does what she does. So Jeaneen, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Curtis.
Why don't you start off by telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
So, I am originally from Hawaii. Now I live in Los Angeles. And people ask me why I would ever leave Hawaii. Um, I was already a speech therapist in 2001, and then I decided I wanted to do acting. So I moved to Los Angeles, but I'm really glad I am a speech therapist because making money as a waitress trying to do acting was very difficult. So so I actually was doing speech therapy in Los Angeles in 2006 and worked in the schools here. And then in 2010, I started to do early intervention, which is 0 to 3 years old. And it's a whole different population of children. And they're so adorable and cute. And, at the time I wasn't sure if I myself was going to have children. Like I wasn't sure. I had nieces and I was very happy being an aunt. And then then I decided when I was 35, I was like, well, this is now or never. Am I going to have kids? And my partner at the time, we decided, okay, we'll try. We'll see what happens. And we got pregnant. And so when I was 36, I had my son in 2012. His name is Che, and he was amazing. He's just this chubby little kid, and he was just a ball full of laughter and smiles and giggles, and he was just a perfect little baby. And unfortunately, at 13 months old, he had a tragic fall from our bed, which was only 18 inches off the ground, and he hit his head in just the way that it created a very large brain bleed. And a couple days later, he had a stroke in the hospital. He had to have an emergency craniotomy right after the fall, and the doctors said that he might never walk or talk, and it was such a traumatic experience for our whole family, especially for him. But he is the most resilient person and such a little warrior in his own right that how could we as parents be depressed or anything like that when we have to really think about our child. And so, people say, how did you get through that point in your life? And I said, it was by putting my thoughts into action and not being stuck in a place where, tragedy took over my mindset. Because as long as you are moving forward, you are making progress. And, now my son is going to be 12 years old. He's going to start middle school next week. And he still has problems, as far as he doesn't use his right arm or hand. He has some cognitive impairment. He, has special ed services. So he has physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, adaptive PE. And he still is not able to run and jump the same way as kids his age. He can do it, but it's just not as agile or as balanced as you would expect someone to be at 12 years old. But he's the reason why I have this passion for working with children as well. I've been a speech therapist for longer than he's been alive, over 20 years. And he's not the reason why I started to be a speech therapist, but he definitely is the passion behind why I do speech therapy now. To see him interact with young children, um, because sometimes he will come to the preschool that I see kids at, and he will interact with these young kids. And, these young kids, they just are so, they're like, this child is big and he's talking to me, and they find him as like a friend as well. So I think he's learned a lot of how to play with young children from watching me do therapy. And it's the same therapy I did with him. And, it inspired me to also write a book, and it's called Play Dumb and Sabotage. And it's really about how other caregivers and parents, educators can find ways to develop language in young children. So, Che had a fall and an accident, but there are so many young children who are normal developing and physically and cognitively, but just delayed in speech. And I think, by providing parents, caregivers, and educators with the tools and strategies to develop language, we can help to decrease the number of kids overall that need speech therapy.
So why did you decide to become a speech therapist?
That goes all the way back to when I was 8 years old. Um, my grandfather was very sick. He had lung cancer. He ended up passing away. And I remember at the time I felt very helpless because I wanted to do more for him. I wanted to be helpful. And I felt like being 8 years old, I couldn't help him physically, right? So I think that was the key moment in my life where I wanted to be helpful to other people. And I grew up wanting to be as helpful and nurturing to other people as possible. And I grew up thinking, oh, maybe I'll be a teacher, because I think in elementary school, a lot of people want to be teachers because they have great teachers. And then in high school, I heard about physical therapy. And I thought, well, that would be a great profession that could have helped my grandfather. And so I knew I needed to get a master's degree for physical therapy at the time. Now you need a doctorate. But at the time, because I'm, you know, older, a little bit older, you only needed a master's. So my bachelor's degree I actually got in English literature and creative writing because I do love to read. I do love to write. And I thought, well, if I'm going to get a science degree for my master's, why don't I get something in the arts for my bachelor's? And it really helped me when I made the decision to, when I was going to apply to physical therapy school, everybody I felt like wanted to be a physical therapist, and it felt like a very saturated um, occupation at the time. And so someone had mentioned, have you thought about speech therapy? And I didn't really know what that was. I hadn't really heard of too much about it. But when I learned that it was about, communication, about language, and, teaching that to either children or adults, I thought that was right up my alley because it would allow me to help people. And also, I could use my love for communication and language and apply it to that. So that was really why I started to be a speech therapist. And 23 years later, I'm still loving my profession, and I still love working with two different populations. I work with children and I work with adults, adults in the hospital, and then children either in their home or in the schools. And, I don't think I would ever work with just one population because I have such a, affinity for both that it allows me to have variety in my work week. And it also allows me to just help everybody that I could, as much as possible.
Okay, everybody, it's Michael E. Cullen II.
And I'm Sesame and Carta from the All Too Real 2 podcast. We're passionate about movies, TV, and pretty much all things pop culture.
Dive into the chaos of failed sitcoms, direct-to-video sequels, and the quirky realms of cinema and TV.
Join us every Thursday for your dose of All Too Real 2 entertainment.
We'll guide you through debates like whether Howard the Duck qualifies as a superhero.
Ponder if Larry the Cable Guy could be the new Rock or Schwarzenegger.
Discover if some shows and movies movies should have stayed in the cutting room.
Ever heard of a sitcom featuring that dictator with the funny mustache? Well, we watched it.
We're dedicated to unraveling the peculiarities of pop culture, sometimes with awesome guests.
So, if you're into the eccentric world of pop culture,
Listen and subscribe to All Too Real 2
available wherever you find podcasts
and on Age of Radio.
So why do you think so many kids need speech therapy?
I think a good percentage of children need speech therapy because caregivers and parents and educators, we over anticipate their needs. And, as caregivers, we think of caregiving as making sure the child is comfortable, making sure they're fed, making sure they're dry, making sure that they're not too hot or too cold. And so we do a lot of things. We over anticipate what they need because we want to be good caregivers, and we do things for them. We do things to them where we feed them, we change them, we provide all these services as caregivers to the child. And, in actuality, it may appear that we're great caregivers, but in actuality, we are doing the child a disservice by only doing for the child and not allowing that child to indicate that they might be hungry, or indicate that they might need to be changed, or indicate that they want to play with a certain toy or eat a certain snack. So I think it's a lot of times, parents are doing things for their child rather than interacting with their child. And, I had one parent tell me, I didn't know I had to interact so much with my child because she thought that she was doing a great job by changing the diapers, by feeding the child, by, getting the bed ready and comfortable and all that stuff. And they didn't realize that they had to play with the child so much, read with the child so much, sing with them, be animated, having this back and forth. I call it conversation, even if there's no words, right? There can be nonverbal babbling, it could be words, it could be sentences, but it's this back and forth conversation rather than this monologue of the parent does this for the child. I mean, there are children, children with autism, children with brain injuries, children with Down syndrome and other disabilities and things that need speech therapy because of their disability or consequence. But there are so many children who are normal developing. They have, normal physical development, normal cognitive development. They're just late talkers because their parents and caregivers were not educated enough or at all about how to develop and nurture language in a very playful and very natural way. That I think that we can decrease the number of children that need speech therapy by educating people from the get-go, right? They have, in order to have a child or birth a baby, you go to birthing class, but you don't have to go to a language development class. So this is really a very conversational book, and it's available in paperback, audiobook, and in a Kindle. So in every way, shape, and form, it's very simple to have this conversation and learn strategies that they could easily implement.
Well, before we jump into talking about your book, talk about some of the top strategies that parents can implement to help with language development.
Absolutely. So I think one of the key things is to slow your speech down, right? So we tend to speak too quickly sometimes, especially if, having an adult conversation, we're speaking very quickly. But when you're speaking with a child, if you slow your speech just a little bit, they can understand the cadence of the words. They can understand which words and syllables you are stressing or enunciating or elongating better or more, right? You can hear the melody of the words. You can hear that there are different parts to a sentence rather than words jumbled together. And then clapping syllables out. So if you're saying like elephant or caterpillar. You could clap the syllables out, or you could tap it on them like caterpillar so they can feel it. So it's like a multi-sensory input of how they can hear the words, they can feel the words, they can see how it sounds like in the rhythm if you're doing clapping or tapping. So I think that's one good strategy is to slow things down and to tap and clap syllables out. Another thing is one of the key things as a child is able to answer yes and no is to not ask a yes and no question unless you're willing to honor that no, right? So if you were to ask them, are you ready to brush your teeth? And they say no. Or are you ready to eat dinner? And they say no. You need to honor that no, right? But if I say it's time to get ready for bed, do you want to brush your teeth or change into pajamas first? I offer them two different choices rather than a yes no question. Or if it's snack time, instead of saying, oh, do you want goldfish? Do you want an apple? Do you want a banana? Do you want to eat? If they say no to those things, you're going to have this endless like stream of questions. Do you want to eat celery? You want to eat something else? So it could be very simple. Like we're going to have a snack. Do you want to eat an apple or banana? Or we're going to have goldfish. Do you want 2 goldfish or 3 goldfish? And introduce like different numbers as well, giving them the decision that they can make that decision about what they're eating or what they're doing. We're going to get changed. Do you want to wear the blue shirt or the green shirt? Rather than, are you ready to get changed? Or do you want to wear this green shirt? Do you want to wear this blue shirt? Do you want to wear this red shirt? And if the answer is no, 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 you're going to be in this constant like series of questions, yes, no questions. So don't ask a yes, no question unless you're willing to honor that no. And it goes into articulation. So if your child is working on articulation or expanding a sentence, if you say the caterpillar's on the leaf, you can't say, can you say the caterpillar's on the leaf? Or can you say caterpillar? I might say caterpillar, you say it. Or I might say the caterpillar's on the leaf. Your turn. You try it. So it's, things like that where you're not asking them to say it, you're telling them to say it. And I think that works out a lot better that when parents say, oh, can you do this? Can you say this? Would you like this? And if the answer is no, then the answer is no. And if you don't honor that no, then you're losing a little bit of trust with that child because you can't just say, well, you're going to do this anyway, or you're going to eat this anyway. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So talk about who are the most influential people in your field for you.
I think definitely the most influential person for myself was my supervisor. My mentor when I graduated school, her name is Kathy Mayamori, and I talk about her in my book. When I graduated, you have to have a clinical supervisor your first like 9 months of working, right? Because you graduate, you pass your tests, exams, and then you're placed in a job, but you're not completely on your own for the first 9 months. You have a supervisor to make sure that you know what you're doing, right? And I worked in the school district, and my supervisor, I would call her almost every day because working in the school district, and I'm sure you've experienced this, that there are so many children that need speech therapy in the schools that the caseloads of the speech therapists are so high. It's just almost impossible to schedule your day in a calm way. It's like you're doing therapy after therapy or therapies and tests and all this stuff. And you're seeing so many more children than you'd ever seen in graduate school. You're given a limited number of kids to work with when you're in grad school. You have like 4 or 5 kids. When you go to work in the schools, you have 50, 60, 70, 80 kids sometimes. And that can be very, very overwhelming. And not only working with the children, but working with the parents. And Kathy and also the other speech therapists on the team that I was working with, they were so instrumental in teaching me different strategies on how to work with kids in therapy and how to work with parents and how to create great goals and what makes a great goal. Um, and, now that I'm a parent of a child with special needs, I sometimes will rewrite goals that are presented to us for in the IEPs, individualized education plan, because I know that the goal could be written better. As you want the goal to be as, you know, complete as possible. If any therapist picks up this IEP, that they know exactly what the goal for that activity or whatever the goal is for the child, they want to make sure that they know what it's aiming for, what the percentage of mastery is, and what kind of cueing that child might need. And so I feel like I had a really great foundation of learning from Kathy Maimori.
Okay, so talk about your book. Tell us what readers can expect to find when they read it and why you decide to write it.
So my book is meant to be as conversational as possible, right? There's no need to pull out a dictionary or some kind of speech therapy book about how to learn certain definitions. Everything is provided in there. So any parent, caregiver, educator can pick it up. Any new therapist can pick it up. And it's a conversation about how, as caregivers, educators, um, and anybody who interacts with children, that we are able to provide a level of guidance and practice for these children just by adjusting different things in our own lifestyle, such as, slowing things down, clapping and tapping syllables out, being super animated. I think being animated and having facial expressions and gestures is really important because the child can not only hear what we're saying, but they can kind of see how we are expressing ourselves through language because I think that's so important. By just hearing words, that's one thing, that's one aspect, but by experiencing those words in a situation where facial expressions and gestures are incorporated, I told one parent to work on um, pretending to be you are in a high school musical and to sing a song and because her daughter used to love Disney songs. So I said, if you're in a high school musical and you are performing this song, because her daughter used to jumble all the words together in the song. But I said, if you over exaggerate the words and you elongate certain syllables and create gestures to to create this experience, then your daughter will be able to understand that these words are actually broken up into syllables and these sentences in these songs are actually words that are making up an actual sentence rather than just a melody of sound. Um, and I think that, parents, when they're given like a blueprint about how to engage language, at the end of every chapter, there is how to apply the strategy that's written in the chapter into your daily life. Like there's one chapter about not asking yes, no questions unless you're willing to honor that no. And at the end of the chapter, it helps you to write down some questions that are, you know, not yes, no questions, but provide opportunities to make a choice between two things, or how to write a statement rather than ask a yes, no question. At the end of, the chapter about sequencing, right? Because sequencing is so important, like with organization and, having a schedule. I'm sure your son has a schedule for the day, right? He knows what the periods are for middle school and, what needs to happen in every aspect of his day. And so, we don't think about organizing. I mean, I have a paper planner and I have to have things super organized, but some people don't. They just they kind of fly by their day, right? Knowing what's going to be happening. But if you actually write down every important event that happens in your daytime, then you realize that there are so many different things that we take for granted about different meetings with people, having lunch, or going to the gym or other activities that we try to lead our child throughout the day by saying we need to do this and this and this, but not really having them involved in what's happening. At an early age, I taught my son, I would expose him to sequencing and organization by saying like, okay, we're going to do this first, this next, and this last. And after we did those things, I would review it. I said, okay, we just brushed our teeth, we changed our clothes, and then we put on our shoes. Okay, now we're going to get in the car, we're going to go grocery shopping, and then we get to go to the park. Okay, so then after we got done grocery shopping, I said, oh, we finished our grocery shopping. What are we going to do next? And we're going to go to the park. Great. So it helps him with memory, helps with organization. So there's, in the chapter, I help to provide examples for the parents on how to organize the child's day so that the child is able to understand that better.
So tell us about any current or upcoming projects that you're working on that listeners need to know about.
Absolutely. So I'm currently working on building an online training and online conference with some other educators as well. And I'm reaching out locally. I'm in Los Angeles. So if anybody's in Los Angeles, reach out to me. I'm doing some local trainings with parents and also some educators at preschools, at the YMCA, at some other early education centers. And I would love to, I'm going to put it out there within the year. I'd love to do a TED Talk. I think that'd be a great opportunity to plant the seed in so many minds around the world that language development is really important and that we can create better communicators and more confident speakers if we are able to develop language at an early age.
Okay, we'll throw out your contact information so people can keep up with everything that you're up to.
Perfect. You can contact me on my website. It's playdumbandsabotage.com. And the links for my book is in there as well as like a contact. They can fill out a contact page and ask me any questions, or if they want to book me for an online training or local training, that'd be amazing.
Okay, close us out with some final thoughts. Maybe if there was something I forgot to talk about that you would like to touch on, or any final thoughts you have for the listeners.
I think in order to work with children and interact with children, you need to be able to be vulnerable and be silly and create a rapport with the child in order to have them feel that they are a part of the interaction and communication, and that they are affecting you as if and you are affecting them. It's this back and forth communication. So, don't be afraid to be silly. Don't be afraid to be super animated, and really make them feel that you are invested in the communication.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, play DumbandSabotage.com. Please be sure to follow, rate, review, share this episode to as many people as possible, especially all the parents out there. Jump on your favorite podcast app, give us a follow and a review. If you have any guest or suggestion topics, Curtis Jackson 1978 at att.net is the place to send them. Thank you for listening and supporting the show. And Jeaneen, thank you for all you do, and thank you for joining us.
All right. Thank you so much, Curtis. Thank you for having me.
For more information on the Living the Dream podcast, visit www.djcurveball.com. Until next time, stay focused on living the dream.